The people we're going after, these aren't guys who stole 20 bucks out of the register.
The first suicide bomb exploded in central Baghdad at 10 a.m.
I want to get this guy. I mean, we've come around the world. So a 6-hour stakeout, a 12-hour stakeout, you have to really focus.
Trouble today in northern Iraq.
Suicide bomber near the town of Sulaymaniyah took out Australian cameraman Paul Moran.
Literally hours are going by. You're trying to maintain focus on a target. You're trying to make sure that no one is eyeballing your vehicle.
The U.S. military quickly named the prime suspect Ansar al-Islam.
Ansar al-Islam. It's a sweat box. You can't crack the windows. How do you overcome being tired, hungry, bored, hot, cold?
The group has expanded its reach to America.
You focus on the mission, that's it.
What should the U.S. do now?
My name is Adam Saralski. I'm a journalist. I began my career as an attorney in U.S. intelligence, but for the last decade, have traveled the world covering national security issues. 18 months ago, I started compiling a list of people wanted for terrorism and war crimes who are living freely in the United States and Europe. I'm bringing together an elite team of operatives to shine a light on these cases and hopefully see justice done. David Crane spent 30 years as a special operations officer and senior U.S. intelligence official before becoming the first American in over half a century to lead a war crimes tribunal. An expert in international law and diplomacy, he's agreed to vet our cases and oversee our work on the ground.
Get a chance to look at the target set?
I have. These guys give me chills when I look at their cases. These individuals are living amongst us. They could be in the checkout line at the local supermarket. They can be anywhere.
Roger Carstens is one of the world's leading authorities on unconventional warfare. He's what the Pentagon likes to call a snake eater. He's a West Point grad, former lieutenant colonel in the Green Berets, and his last assignment was training Iraq's elite counter-terror corps. He's both a strategist and a soldier.
The bottom line, we're going to do our own work on the ground.
Absolutely.
Sign me up.
Scott Tyler served as a sniper cell leader with the Navy SEALs in Iraq, Afghanistan, and a number of undisclosed locations. He's an expert at surveilling and eliminating high-value targets. And now, he's agreed to trade in his rifle for a camera.
Najmuddin Faraj Ahmad, age 53, better known as Mullah Kreker. In the late 90s, he moved between different radical groups in Kurdistan and northern Iraq before meeting up and teaming up with Osama bin Laden and some other top al-Qaeda operatives. Look at this. This is Mullah Kreker waving the black flag of jihad. In December '01, with bin Laden's blessing and backing, he founded his own group, Ansar al-Islam, or AI.
According to the National Counterterrorism Center, some AI members trained in al-Qaeda camps in Afghanistan, and the group provided safe haven to al-Qaeda fighters in northern Iraq.
That raises the question, is AI totally independent, or are they just another al-Qaeda offshoot?
When you look at how they started, as well as the joint training and joint operations they've conducted, it's hard to say that Mullah Kreker's group is flying solo.
Mullah Kreker has been designated as a terrorist by the U.S. and other countries, not only because of his links to al-Qaeda, but because of his own group's involvement in a lot of terrorist attacks. Check this out. In addition to the ID attacks, Ansar al-Islam is credited actually with carrying out more beheadings than any other group in Iraq. And they've been running these sniper teams.
I led sniper and counter-sniper teams in Iraq and spent a lot of time chasing guys like these around. The way that they celebrate their hits on coalition forces is disgusting.
Seems like Mullah Kreker has touched all of our communities somewhere or other. His group actually killed the first journalist during the Iraq War, an Australian by the name of Paul Moran.
The strangest part is, Mullah Kreker is living freely in Oslo.
Norway? Like Nobel Peace Prize Norway?
The Iraqis actually want him for murder, mass murder, in fact. So how do you want to handle this?
We'll divide up on this one. Adam will head to the Middle East to take a first-hand look at the evidence against Kreker. Scott, you and Glenn will get into the target area and get PID. And I'll work the diplomatic channels with David Crane.
We owe it to all our communities to make sure that justice is done on this one.
our way to Norway to pursue our next target. This kind of hits me personally because I not only was an American soldier in Iraq, but I also served with the Iraqi military and with the Iraqi civilians.
We're on our way to look for someone named Mula Kreker. This has significant interest to me because he's openly admitted to leading suicide bombings and attacks on coalition and U.S. forces.
Eric Campbell is a well-regarded Australian journalist. In 2003, he was covering the war in Iraq with colleague Paul Moran.
Paul was my cameraman in Iraq in the very early days of the Iraq War. We'd just both had children. I had a three-month-old son. He had a 6-week-old daughter. So we went to northern Iraq thinking it was going to be relatively safe to cover the war, probably the safest area in Iraq at that time.
And were you wearing anything that identified you as being members of the press corps?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had the blue flak jacket on. I had a large press tag emblazoned across me. I mean, we were clearly journalists. There's no question of that. On the third day of the war, the fighting actually reached northern Iraq, and we were just filming down at the checkpoint when suddenly something strange happened that caught Paul's attention. He ran forward in front of me to try to see what was going on, and at that point a car burst into the checkpoint and exploded. There was this enormous flame that threw me back. I was in shock, I was deafened from the blast, and as I pulled myself together I saw a group of tangled bodies on the road where a few seconds before we'd seen soldiers and women and children, and there was just this scene from hell. And that's when I realized that this body in front of me on the ground was actually my friend Paul. We had to get out, and as we drove off, the thought that hit me was that Paul has a 6-week-old daughter and she is never going to know her father.
And yet nobody has been held accountable for this attack.
Yeah. When I went in there and had this conversation with a Norwegian journalist about Mula Kreker, the name meant nothing to me, but it's a name I know very well now. It's astonishing. It's astonishing that this man who set up this group that did these things continues to walk freely in Norway, to enjoy all the freedoms of a society that he wants to destroy, laughing at these useful idiots in Norway. He primed the bomb that is Ansar al-Islam. He set it up. He put it in place. He put in place this system of foreign fighters, of Islamist militants, of terrorists who would attack and kill. He did that. He is responsible for everything they have done because he founded them, he trained them, he inspired them, he led them, he incited them to do these acts of terrorism. I mean, people say to me, am I angry with Mula Kreker, or do I want to see him executed? I don't want the man to die. I want the man to spend the rest of his life in a prison cell. I want him to live long enough to see that everything he's planned and fought for has come to naught. That is justice.
I'll be in Amman while the rest of the team is in Oslo trying to determine what Kreker has been up to. I'm anxious to get the information we need so that when we talk to Norwegian officials, we'll have something powerful. These meetings are happening within days, so it's really a race against the clock to go down there, get the information, and then bring it to Norway.
David Crane is considered to be the foremost expert in international criminal law and justice. He and I are going to be meeting with senior members of the Norwegian government to see if we can move our case forward. Well, welcome to Norway.
Thank you. This is really kind of my home country. Our ancestors are from here.
Tell me, you're peeps now.
Yeah, well, I don't really call them peeps, but it's the same thought.
Well, it's good to have you on board.
Thank you.
Welcome home.
Thank you.
I know you've been busy setting some meetings up tomorrow. I thought it might be helpful to get together and just kind of lay out where we think we are.
We've got 2 meetings set up. One kind of from a strategic point of view, and then the afternoon meeting a little bit more specific.
Yeah, it sounds like the way that it remains open refers to that Supreme Court decision where it was defined as a threat to national security. And that's when maybe our team can just push over the edge and try to, get some sort of resolution. That may be what we hang our hat on to get this done.
I've read the Supreme Court decision. It appears that things are moving forward because this guy's notorious. He's calling for jihad. He's bad-mouthing the United States. I mean, he's in your face. I'm hiding behind the law. Come get me. I'm going to fight you the whole way. But at the end of the day, the rule of law is more powerful than the rule of the gun.
Hello, it's Roger.
Hey, it's Adam.
Hey, what's going on, man?
How's it going?
Good. I think we're making some progress here. We're trying to open up a few more meetings. We'll see how it goes. How about you?
I met with the Chief Judge of the National Security Court who oversaw the case, and he talked about how important it is and that this guy ought to face justice. The case really sits in this star chamber. It's a national security court, so it's pretty secretive. I'm trying to pry information out of the mukhabarat here, and it's slow going, but we're getting there.
You know, the sense from talking to folks here within the government and some sources that the Jordanian case is just dead. My sense is that people in the Department of Immigration here, they're taking this guy as a national security risk.
Right.
And therefore they may just be pushing him out of the country based on that as opposed to
immigration grounds.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk a little later. Be safe. Bye.
Our first order of business was to make sure that this person lived where we thought he did, so we could get PID, which is positive identification. It's a kind of a high security front door, so I waited until someone went in, and then I followed them into the building, checked the mailboxes, found the guy's name, Mula Kreker. I found the door and door number matched. That's enough for me to really focus down on surveying this guy's apartment. This particular person that we're looking at, he's a prominent figure within this community here. If I misjudge the threat of the neighborhood or misjudge what's going on, people could lose their lives.
So we're working on our target here in Norway, Mula Kreker. This guy's responsible for setting up what's classified as a terrorist organization by the U.S. and many other countries. I just need to know, is this the right place? Is this where the guy lives? So that when David and Roger do the high-level meetings, we can say, we know where this guy is, we know he's at his home, and we can either confront him or enable his arrest. Glenn is a former Navy SEAL. Sniper trained.
Yeah, so these are all our choices.
He's a pilot, he's a corpsman. He comes highly recommended from people I trust in my community.
I like that little white one.
It's fairly unpretentious.
It is fairly unpretentious. It looks like a delivery vehicle.
Yeah.
Nice. It's gonna work. We need 2 cars. We want the Berlingo and the Volvo.
That one is already rental.
What about that Nissan?
The Xterra? Can we get that?
We'll grab the stuff from the hotel, and then we'll head out to the country to set it up.
Hey, Glenn, it's Adam. Look, I got a call from the chief of counterterrorism up in Sulaymaniyah, offering us an intel dump on Kreker. Question is, from a security standpoint, he's saying they'll provide a personal security detail. Does that sound like something we ought to take to the bank?
You are going to be most likely met by like a good contingent of Talibanese guys. They will probably come heavily armed. So I imagine as far as them escorting you around Suli, they're not going to take any chances. Like I said, I have people in town. So, you know, if the hairs on the back of your neck start standing up in any way, shape, or form, please call me. Travel safe. Look forward to seeing you.
Okay. Bye-bye. I'm on my way to Kurdistan, the north of Iraq, which is where Eric Campbell narrowly survived a suicide bombing carried out by Mullah Kreker's group, Ansar al-Islam. The Iraqis insist they have an ironclad case against Kreker, and they want to walk me through it. This could be the evidence the Norwegians need to finally bring him to justice.
The It's a really crowded city, so it's going to be better for us to head right outside of the city limits. There's a country area that we can blend in a little bit more.
We're dressing the vehicles with some limo tint because you can film through it better.
See me at all?
I mean, I can see you, but not well.
This is the first target where I'm going against someone who was actively engaged in the direct opposition of what I was doing while I was in the military. I take that very personally, and I'd like to at least sit down with this guy and talk to him, whether it's a confrontation on the street or whether we're able to get authorities involved.
In a really small enclosed neighborhood like this, it'll be a good thing to just read all of the people in the neighborhood and just try to be hyper aware of what's happening. This is a legitimately dangerous area to be going into.
So right now, David and Roger are meeting with members of parliament here in Norway to figure out why Mula Krekker is still living in Oslo and why he hasn't been extradited. And most importantly, what can we do about that?
We have ended up in a situation where we have a wanted terrorist living in his own apartment. He can move freely around in Oslo, and he can do that even though all courts in Norway have said that he's a threat to our country's safety. But the strange thing is that the Norwegian authorities have just negotiated a return deal with the Iraqi authorities, which means that we can return all Iraqis actually to Iraq without any threat of them being tortured or receiving the death penalty. But for some reason the authorities seem to believe that we cannot return this mullah to Iraq.
I just want to make sure I heard it right. For some reason the Norwegian government will be willing to send any other Iraqi back to Iraq, but not this particular mullah.
That's it. And I don't understand why. He is, of course, a potential threat, not only to us, but to other European countries.
Who can we go talk to?
Well, I think the Minister of Immigration Issues should be able to answer the questions.
Sounds like the power to extradite this one gentleman resides in that of the overarching federal government, the current administration.
Yep. They can do something about it if they want to, but I don't think they want to.
We just arrived here in Sulaymaniyah in northern Iraq, and it's here that Ansar al-Islam, Mullah Krekker's group, had its base of operations. Our contact is Raj, who's from the security services. He really is this Mullah Krekker and knows more about him than almost anybody here. Raj, how would you boil down Mullah Krekker's philosophy and his preachings?
Jihad by any means necessary. Mullah Krekker first met bin Laden in the late 80s. Mullah Krekker was very impressed. He was overwhelmed. He called him the crown jewel of Islam. And there was a pact made between Krikar and bin Laden to help him out in the future, to provide weapons, to provide training, to provide funds. Krikar introduced bomb-making experts to Al-Qaeda, and not the other way around.
He's preached against Americans as well, hasn't he?
Yes, yes. He is not saddened by the death of Americans. He calls it the glorious act of jihad. Anybody that's against his ideology, he wants them dead.
At what point did he start killing people?
It comes to the question, do people kill people or do guns kill people? Of course, people kill people, and the gun is the tool they use. Krikar, his tongue is his weapon. The first suicide bombings that took place in Kurdistan was encouraged by Mala Krikar. The first international Arabs to come into Iraqi Kurdistan were sponsored by Mala Krikar. The first IED to go off in Kurdistan were all Mala Krikar's doing.
Why would a progressive country like Norway protect Mullah Krekker, it seems?
From what we heard, they believe that maybe Krikar will not be given a fair trial. Maybe he'll be hurt. Maybe he'll be tortured. These are some of the excuses they use. But you have to understand, Iraqi Kurdistan is modeled after the U.S. justice system. It's one of the only places in the Middle East you are innocent until you are proven guilty. He's hiding under a set of laws. This very same laws are supposed to protect the innocent.
Most Americans, and I'm sure a lot of Europeans, have never heard of Mullah Krekker or Ansar al-Islam.
Exactly. Who heard of Osama bin Laden before 1982? That's the problem, because nobody knows about him. That's why he's so dangerous. Not only do I think he's a threat to Americans abroad, I think he has the potential to be a threat to Americans inside America.
people we're going after, these aren't guys who stole $20 out of the register. These are people who are allegedly coordinating attacks around the world, responsible for hundreds, possibly thousands of deaths. And the person that we're surveilling here is Mula Kreker.
Possible relative leaving the target building?
Typically on targets, they leave the house, they go to work. This guy is unemployed, and apparently he doesn't like to go out very often. The thing that keeps me focused is I want to get this guy. I mean, we've come around the world. So a 6-hour stakeout, a 12-hour stakeout, you have to really focus and use some discipline.
Surveillance is not fun. It's not like you see on TV. We're in a dressed-out vehicle, totally darked out. You're sitting in the back. Literally hours are going by. You're trying to maintain focus on a target. You're trying to make sure that no one is eyeballing your vehicle. It's a sweat box. You can't crack the windows. How do you overcome being tired, hungry, bored, hot, cold? You focus on the mission. That's it.
General, can you tell me a little bit about Mula Kreker?
أتوانين إما ليرة نايبنين أسامة بن لادن دوهم كسيكي جولة تيرورستاني شو نكر تيرورستيكي بشكولانية يعني كسيكي بسيطني خلصين رابع وكوبيا متنيشة قال لقيادية كاني قاعدة.
Why are you saying he was an Al-Qaeda leader? I thought he was just the leader of Ansar al-Islam.
نعم من بيطلم لبروي أو لصالي نوهشتا لباكستان أسامة بن لادن بينيوه.
When Mula Kreker was asked about his relationship with Osama bin Laden, he said it was totally innocent, that they had met and all they discussed were orphans.
الليرة لكردستان كومال منالي دروس كردبو لو سنوري كده صلاتي خوين بسراك أشكايا ولا منطقي بيارا هموي بفكري خوي درسي بيوتن دروسي بيوتن دروسي جهادي بيوتن أما دي أكردن بويكا لأيندا وان ليبيا باور بوان بينو بوي خوام تقينو.
Did any of them carry out attacks?
چن کسی خوی تقانو لکردستان لیرا.
What kind of attacks has Mula Kreker promoted or encouraged or facilitated or financed?
هر هموی. فکری خلقی تیگه.
So you're telling me he was brainwashing these people?
اما بلغمان لك بالرسمه وكقصبوا خلقك على مزقوتا كان هموي اجرين لا لو خساني كبويا كان يعني اخوان الزو جهاد كانوا برا.
Do you still consider him a threat?
بالتأكيد.
Has he continued to engage in terror finance?
بالتأكيد.
Do the Norwegians know this?
بسيديا كاني بشريتي ببرغاري دادور وبإفادي أوانيك لبردمي حاكمي إما إفادانا ولا سرملا كريكار.
What would you say to the Norwegian officials who worry that if Mula Kreker was sent back here that he'd be tortured or killed?
أتوانم بوتا وعدهم حزكي شيت مسؤولي كي نرويجي يعني بروتوكولي لغلا اتفاقي لغلا.
Would you be willing to write out some sort of statement?
ده جاربوا نوسن. مسألة تعذيب دلميا بن نيشتوا.
Speak to me.
I'm moving into the target area. I'm going to set up the camera.
Well, good luck.
All right,
out. We settled on a plan that Glenn suggested, which was, we get the little HD cameras and set it up across the courtyard and just let it record.
We still hadn't gotten any eyes on this guy, so we started to press a little harder, probing into the compound itself, setting up surveillance from within the compound. It's not the kind of guy you can just swing through town on and in 48 hours get live video footage. We had to understand how we were going to get our surveillance equipment in place to get a shot of this guy.
I think the majority of the Norwegian public are very frustrated. We have a central person called Mølla Krekar, who's a known terrorist. In fact, I called him a terrorist once in the public, and he sued me for libel, and I won. But he's walking around freely. He can't be extradited, the government is saying, because we have signed conventions that we will not extradite people to nations which in fact are practicing the death penalty. So if, for instance, bin Laden came to Norway and the United States wanted to have him, we would not be able to send him to the United States because he have the risk of the death penalty. As long as the death penalty is in the system, anyone coming to Norway is safe, and that is, to me, ludicrous. My interest as a Norwegian politician is for the Norwegian public.
What has to happen to change the situation in Norway?
Get the government to say, well, we view the risk of Mølla Krekar getting the death penalty in Iraq so low that we are returning him.
And he'd be returned for a fair and open trial?
Yes.
One of our team is in Kurdistan today, and he's received assurance from an Iraqi judge, which the judge says he will provide in the written form that Mølla Krekar will not be subjected to execution or torture. Will this make a difference?
Well, yes, it would make a difference because it will give me a very, very strong argument against the government. Why are you not sending him back? Why are you not talking to this judge? Why are you not listening to what the Iraqis themselves are saying?
A couple of hours ago, we got a call from the general saying that he was sending an emissary with a letter in Norway. It's now 10 o'clock at night. I have a flight in a couple of hours to Oslo, where I'm supposed to be meeting with Norwegian officials. This is the letter that's supposed to kind of tilt the scales. It's a linchpin, and right now I don't have it. Without it, I don't know where we are. It's crunch time. A couple of hours ago, we got a call from the general saying that he was sending an emissary with a letter. This is the letter that's supposed to kind of tilt the scales, and right now I don't have it. He hasn't showed yet. As we were preparing to leave the hotel, a representative from the Counterterrorism Bureau showed up with the letter. General Hassan and others in the government here decided that لاھوڕ Talabani, who's the chief of counterterrorism, was the most appropriate person to issue the letter. Talabani is not only the chief of counterterrorism, he's also the nephew of Iraq's president. This is ammunition. It seems to address every concern that Norway has laid out. Now the question is, what will Norway say? No one is contesting the fact that Mølla Krekar represents a threat. His organization has killed Americans, Brits, Australians, countless Iraqis, and yet he gets to live in Norway with all the legal protections in the world. The Norwegians say they need assurances from the Iraqis gave those assurances to me, and I'm going to pass those along to the Norwegians and see where they stand.
Adam's flying in with a letter to see if we can get Norway to finally move on this person and extradite him. So for me to show up and talk to David and Roger and Adam and say, you know, I don't even know if he's here, well, that's unacceptable. It's about 2 hours at the front door. And then at 2 hours and 1 minute, bam, there he is.
The agreement. We would like to officially state that if Mølla Krekar returned to the Kurdistan region, he would be treated within the letter of the law. This afternoon, you and I are sitting down and meeting with the State Secretary for Immigration, who has the portfolio and the authority to send him to Iraq.
It's come down to one ministry that has the power to represent the entire government and make the decision to send Mølla Krekar back to Iraq.
Everybody in the government, the National Prosecution Service, the Norwegian Parliament has said that this very office is the office responsible for the deportation of Mølla Krekar. This whole week has been leading to this meeting. We've been talking. There seems to be a lot of frustration about Mullah Kraqar here. What's your thinking on that?
When asylum seekers come to Norway and ask for protection in Norway, every single case is assessed individually by the immigration authorities.
And you have denied his application for asylum?
In 2003, that asylum status and the residence permit were revoked, and he was deemed to be a threat against national security.
So your Supreme Court has deemed him a threat to national security?
The Supreme Court has upheld the decision made by the immigration authorities.
And his permit to stay here has been revoked?
That's correct.
So what's the holdup?
The holdup is the situation pending in Iraq.
To be fair, that was 6 years ago.
Yes, and the government is following the development in Iraq in order to ensure that at the time a decision can be made to implement the expulsion order.
What do you actually have to have in front of you that will say, my goodness, we believe he will get a fair trial in Iraq?
I think it's not very useful sort of to speculate on the exact format or the exact information which would be sufficient in implementing that
But it doesn't
order.
sound like there are goalposts. I mean, this man has been here for years, and nobody seems to know what will satisfy the authorities in order for him not to be here.
Well, I have no other answers than I've already given you, and there has to be sufficient information, sufficient evidence
I just
that...
flew in from Iraq this morning, and the Kurdish authorities, they're all saying the same thing, that they will not torture him, they will not kill him. They said he can bring a Norwegian lawyer, the process will be transparent. Why don't you take yes for an answer?
Well, I note that the Kurdish authorities have provided you with that paper. They have so far not provided us with this paper, so that's...
But the Iraqis are asking, what do we need to do? And you're not telling them what they need to do. They're just supposed to know what they need to do?
I think it's been stated very clearly.
I don't know what to say. You know, the buck stops here, except when it doesn't stop here. They need assurances from the Iraqi government, and yet you can't tell us what those assurances need to be.
This is ridiculous. I have never seen such a two-step in my life. This was intentional. They're just hoping that we go away, and I think that that's amazing. It's this office. Yeah. It's clearly this office. Everybody in the government is saying it's this office.
She says right there, she's leaving the room. He's not a convicted terrorist. Well, of course he's not convicted, because you won't deport him to face justice.
They don't want to make that final stroke of the pen to hand him over.
This guy's a designated terrorist. You've got everybody. The U.S., the UN, the Canadians, the Australians, the Jordanians, the Iraqis. Hell, you've got the Norwegian Supreme Court saying this man represents a threat to national security. And yet, he's still here.
And all the government needs to do is make the decision to send him to Iraq.
We've confirmed where he lives, we know where he's at, and we can go get him anytime we want.
He's making Norway essentially a safe haven for terrorist activity.
Norway is absolutely letting justice get in the way of justice.
I'm chomping at the bit to go talk to him, so what do you guys say we head over there and get this thing kicked off?
Yeah, let's go see him.
We're on our way to meet Mullah Kraqar. When it became clear that Norwegian immigration officials simply were not going to act, we reached out to some of his associates and were surprised to get an email back from the mullah himself. A man who intelligence officials have called Osama bin Laden 2.0, an Islamic Nazi, and they call his organization Ansar al-Islam, an al-Qaeda affiliate and an al-Qaeda battalion.
He primed the bomb that is Ansar al-Islam. He is responsible for everything they have done. He incited them to do these acts of terrorism.
We're going over to his house to talk to him about his involvement, his stance, his philosophical views.
Krēkār, his tongue is his weapon. Anybody that's against his ideology, he wants him dead.
I guess the primary difference between this man and Osama bin Laden is Osama bin Laden is hiding in the mountains, while this man is living in plain sight here in Norway.
Well, all courts in Norway have said that he's a threat.
He's walking around freely, and that is, to me, ludicrous. I think in having an open conversation, we might actually get him to implicate himself in some of the very crimes that the Norwegians feel he's alleged to have done.
He's blessed suicide bombings, literally invented the vehicle-borne improvised explosive device, led the world in beheadings, and he's living here in Norway. It's hard to believe. Now, several years back, you founded a group called Ansar al-Islam. You talked about weapons as being one part of the way in which a Muslim carries out jihad. What kind of weapons and tactics are acceptable?
من حذاء إلى قنبلة ذرية وكل دفاع كل سلاح. If I can get Kalashnikov, I will use Kalashnikov.
So, by that token, suicide bombings are okay?
Yes, of course, it's okay.
Sniper squads, assassinations, chemical weapons?
يعني أنا حتى لو أستطيع أن أسمم آبار المياه التي يشرب منها الجنود الأمريكان في العراق هو حلال لي، جائز لي، مثل ما هو يفعل.
You were teaching jihad?
I am now also teaching jihad. You must know. And against American soldiers. You must know this also. Now and future.
Are American soldiers legitimate targets in Iraq?
بكل تأكيد.
American civilians?
What's the difference between American civilian and Norwegian civilians? No different.
What about journalists? Paul Moran, an Australian journalist, died in an attack carried out by your group.
Where he was?
He was working for Australian Broadcasting Corporation.
No, he was with your soldiers.
He was wearing the words press on his chest, wasn't he?
كذب كذب.
Do you regret his death?
أنا لم يبقى دموع حتى أسيلها لأجلكم أو لأجل الأسترالي.
Earlier we were talking about jihad. Were the bombings of the USS Cole, the U.S. Embassy in Kenya, 9/11, are those defensive?
I didn't say that it was jihad.
So to be clear, then, you do not support the 9/11 attacks?
I say that the people in America need this reaction.
Are you saying that America needed to be taught a lesson?
Yes, of course. وما زال يحتاج.
Well, Krieger, when I served in Iraq, I went over thinking that I would put my life on the line to liberate the Iraqi people, not to occupy. And I served alongside Iraqis that I would call my brothers.
أنت كنت تستحق القتل عندما كنت في شوارع بغداد.
I did not serve on an American post. I went to work every day and served on an Iraqi base. There were 7 Americans and over 150 Iraqis. I was their guest.
لا يوجد ضيف. ما فتحنا لك الباب. You say that I came, I was very safety people, I am civilization man, I belong to America. What do you say? You are one of the soldier of new Hitler. And you came to kill us. You came to destroy our mosques. You came to turn our Quran.
The United States has branded you a terrorist. The United Nations has branded you a terrorist. The Canadians have branded you a terrorist. The Iraqis have branded you a terrorist. The Jordanians have branded you a terrorist.
This is only by one thing.
Well, Crocker, we're not meeting with you in a vacuum. You have a past. Your past is in Iraq. Your past is jihad. Your present is jihad, and your future is jihad.
But I didn't do anything more than any Kurdish which they did.
Your group committed suicide bombings, assassinations, murders of civilians.
Against you. Not against the civilian people. It's not true. You did this. You did this. Why it is only Ansar al-Islam?
This is about what you did in Iraq, and you're wanted in Iraq. Iraqi officials went on camera and put in writing assurances that they won't kill or torture you. Those assurances will be passed to Norwegian authorities.
كلام هذا قالوا أثناء المحكمة أيضا قالوا ولكن النرويجيين ما اقتنعوا بمثل هذا الكلام فكيف يسلموني إلى بحيرة من دم.
Well, you've contributed to that life of blood.
Well, I think it's dreadful We cannot sit still accepting this to happen.
I traveled down to Iraq and spoke to a number of senior officials there. They not only gave assurances that he wouldn't be tortured or killed, they gave them in writing and asked that we pass those to the Norwegian government.
Okay. I really cannot understand why the Norwegian authorities haven't been able to get this piece of paper themselves. And you have to do the job for them. I cannot look at this paper without doing anything about it. So I need to send a copy of this letter to the Prime Minister and demand his response. Because this is just crazy.
Is this letter helpful?
It's very helpful. The only thing that worries me is that it took an American television team to provide the letter. But I, on behalf of, I believe, the majority of the Norwegian people, thank you very much for doing this. Thank you.
People are dead. Killed by an organization that Mølla Krekar admits to having created and fostered. We're now heading over to see Carl Hagen, the Vice President of the Norwegian Parliament, in an effort to see if there's some way we can affect some positive outcome.
He looks down upon the Norwegian authorities. He feels nobody can touch me. They know everything, they know what I've done, they know what I'm preaching, and they're doing nothing.
If we were to present you with this paper, would that be meaningful?
That would, of course, be very meaningful, because I would take that piece of paper and demand that we get in touch with the Iraqi authorities and arrange for the transportation of Mølla Krekar back. You have been doing what the Norwegian authorities should have been doing, looking into all opportunities for returning Mølla Krekar. And I think Mølla Krekar will be returned this autumn, and that's probably going to be thanks for the work you've done.
Only hours before this broadcast, the Foreign Minister of Norway went on national television to announce that his country has entered into direct negotiations with Iraq to find a way to extradite Mølla Krekar. He vowed, quote, Mølla Krekar will be deported from Norway.
Next Monday, a new target on The Wanted.
This guy is ground central for Al-Qaeda, and he's walking the streets of one of America's closest allies.
The danger is real.
They might kill him, and they might kill us in the process.
All in the name of justice.
I think we all want to see this guy put away for a very, very long time.
The hunt is on.
That looks like him. Get ready to move.
Picked him up. I got him. Hold on a second.
Suspect car is crossing the bridge.
This guy's definitely trying to burn us.